Green with me. Rob, welcome inside the Armed American Radio Video Network studios. Huge program yesterday, brother. Huge.
Yeah, we got a lot of reach, a lot of traction, a lot of engagement, a lot of comments and feedback. I think it's really important.
People like, Rob, the talk about civil disobedience. I'm convinced of that. I think people are feeling that there's a real possibility of it now. I mean, we're getting close. And when we've got governors like Michigan and others that are pushing the envelope, people are feeling the pinch now that they're told, okay, now I can't even get together with my friends at a fire pit. Who do you think you are? That's coming to the surface, isn't it?
It really is. And I think that's why it's important to channel that angst and that energy and make sure that we keep it focused on being responsible. So I had a lot of people ask me, in the aftermath of that, conversation yesterday, well, what do you exactly want people to do, Rob? Like, what do you think is supposed to happen? Like, and a couple people asked me, like, well, are you planning a rally or a gathering or a protest? And I think that's kind of the point, is that's exactly what we shouldn't be thinking about doing, right? We shouldn't be thinking about gathering in a crowd for, the sake of feeling good about saying we're not going to not gather in a crowd, right? Like, it's not about a rally. It's not about a riot. And my fear is that if we keep on the path we're going with no clear way back to any kind of normal, or without even the expectation that normal is going to be real again, I think we are going to end up in that kind of a riot, Hong Kong, people in the streets, lobbing, canisters and whatnot at each other, and police. And I think what we need to do is get back to work, open our businesses, be responsible. We need to wear the masks and use the PPE and use good sanitation and use social distancing practices to reduce the risk of transmission while accepting the risk of transmission and opening the country back up.
Let's briefly discuss the Ammo Land piece. I was asked by the editors at Ammo Land, where I've been writing for a number of years, to write an op-ed on our video yesterday, and I got that piece penned this morning very early. It came out of editing within minutes. The video, listener, viewer, is available at ammoland.com. You can see it on my Facebook page right here if you're watching on Facebook at Armed American Radio. You can view it on my Twitter at AARMark. I have put it out. And they titled it, Rob, I left it up to them, and they titled it, Now is the Time for Responsible Civil Disobedience. And they've embedded our discussion, 20-minute discussion yesterday on this topic. And I think you liked the way the op-ed was written. You thought it was a good clarification of what we spoke about yesterday on tape, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure it puts it into a context, right? It's going to set a little bit of a landscape for that. I think in isolation, especially, I told a lot of people yesterday afternoon and last night, go back and watch the 15-minute videos that Mark and I have been doing for the last 2 weeks. I'm not the guy pounding on the table screaming, rebel, 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 and I never have been. This is a different circumstance. It's a unique circumstance. And some people read your op-ed and they find it to be partisan and you're attacking Democratic governors or whatever. And yeah, I get it. Like that's you definitely spend more time worrying about the they and the Democrats and the them than I do. I don't look at it as a partisan issue. I think Trump is at least as responsible for the problems we have right now in this response as anybody else. Republican, Democrat, whatever. Our government has botched this response. One of the things I've been asked is, well, do you think, we'd be better off with a true quarantine, the true lockdown? I don't know. If you ask me now, now with the perspective I have now, if you'd have asked me 6 weeks ago, I don't know what I would have said, honestly. But 6 weeks ago, a true 2-week, 15-day stay at home would have been better, right? You have 24 hours, go get your supplies, don't leave your house for 15 days, and let's knock this thing down. That would have been better. Where we are now is like the worst of both worlds. Kind of lockdown, kind of responsibility, kind of open, kind of closed. Let's just open back up and be responsible and take the risks that come with it.
I'm with you 100% on that, but and I don't do this often, but I want to correct you in one point. When you mentioned Democrats, I went after Brian Kemp in this piece too, and I want to point that out.
This is what I was getting from other people.
Oh, from
right?
other people.
Other people
I'm glad you mentioned that. But let me point out, for those of you who haven't read it, I want to make it clear that I went after Brian Kemp in the state of Georgia just as much as I did Whitmer in Michigan, both one a Democrat, one a Republican. The piece was not meant to be partisan. However, if you know me at all, you know that I am far more partisan when it comes to this stuff than Rob Pincus is, and I'm glad for that, Rob. That's what gives us the opportunity to have some pretty good conversations and to get in trouble together from time to time. Let me.
Sure. Yeah.
We do. We've done it over the years. Let me ask you something. You sent me a text. I won't mention the Facebook group unless you want to. I had not been a member of that group, but you mentioned in there, get over there and read the comments. It was about what we did yesterday, and it says, and I quote you, get there and read the comments. It's frustratingly amazing. What does that mean? Tell me about some of those comments you got.
Yeah, it's there's been a couple pockets of real resistance to this idea from people that normally are pretty supportive of my ideas, from groups or just kind of demographics, right? And it's funny, and that's what I meant. Like, it's frustratingly amazing to see people who for years have said, wow, you're the sane voice in the gun community. You're the guy that doesn't, you're not like Mr. Trump is the god of all things that are awesome. And you're not the guy who says my rights, my rights, my rights, and quotes the founding fathers. You have a reasonable approach to this stuff, and we appreciate it. A lot of those people are horrified that I have suggested that we increase risk for the sake of freedom and progress and moving forward. And it's so what's frustratingly amazing in some of those circles is to see that all the things that get the cliches, right? The cliches that get thrown at people that are left leaning or more liberal or more progressive in our society, like sort of coming out. But we have to protect people from themselves, and people aren't capable of being responsible, Rob, and we need the government to tell us what to do, and the government hasn't given us PPE, and the government can't deliver food, and the government can't do this, and people will be at risk. And it's like, wow, this is what a lot of my more conservative friends constantly try to stick you guys with believing and saying, and I don't often see it. But wow, in this case, I'm really seeing it. I'm really seeing this condescending attitude towards human beings, this attitude that humans aren't capable of taking care of themselves, Rob. We need the government to protect us from ourselves, and we need people to be controlled in this case. And it's like, no, I believe in humanity more than you do, Mr. Liberal person.
I'm with you on that. I agree with you. We need to go back, and if you read the column at Ammo Land, I think you'll see that's the gist of it. We don't need to be nanny-stated to understand that we have some responsibilities here. We can take care of ourselves. We know what's best for us. A couple comments here, Rob, quickly. Jeffrey Abraham writes in, I agree with you, Rob. We have allowed a level of absurdity to take over. Rational thought and behavior needs to be brought back to our daily lives. Mike Harbison comes in, he says hi from the communist state of Pennsylvania. I could debate that with you, Mike. There's a lot worse than PA. Dangerous freedom. Doug Ball, two things. Have a price to be paid for them, freedom and socialism. You just have to decide on a personal level what price you're willing to pay, and remember, only one of those options the government will ever let you give up for free. Now, that's true, too. And Chuck Early, hello, Chuck, in Maryland. Great to have you here with us, Dave, and everybody else in here. James, New Germany, checking in. You're in every day. I love that. Rob, let's talk about a term that a lot of people might not know. I'm very familiar with it, and it's the term being gaslighted. Okay, which essentially means you've been sold a bill of goods, or you've bought into something that somebody wants you to believe. Okay, do you want to give a different descriptive of the term? Because there's a great piece up at forgemedia.com that you shot to me and said, let's talk about this today. Prepare for the ultimate gaslighting. Go for it.
Yeah, it's when someone through their own agenda, through manipulation, kind of plants an idea in your head or causes you to question your original premise, your original perspective on something, and then you buy into it, you start believing it. And the perspective of this article is that what's going to happen here in the near future at some point is a bunch of brands and a bunch of corporate marketing and probably a bunch of politicians are going to try to get you kind of back into the new normal, or maybe even to double down on the old normal. With all of our bad habits, right? With all of the things that we did, all the consumerism, all of the, get your head back into your phone, all of the distractions from the family time that people are spending right now, all of the, kind of return to normal, but in the bad ways. And this article calls for people to sort of be prepared for that and to think about what has changed for the better. Now, about 10 days ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, I posted an article another article that was along the same lines. And I posed the question, what do you think, social media audience, what do you think will change for the better for you or for our society after the corona crisis? Some of the examples I gave were, the increase in the use of telemedicine. So you don't have to go to the doctor's office. You just consult with your doctor or practitioner, healthcare provider, whatever, and virtually, and they tell you what to do, or they call in a prescription, and you don't have to go through the process, take the time, expose yourself to the other sick people, all that stuff. Another thing might be homeschooling, right? Or the increase in the acceptance of distance education, particularly, was what I think I mentioned 10 days ago. Now I'm starting to think maybe there'll be some government-funded distance education homeschooling options with a public school curriculum for families that want to stick with what they're doing right now. And maybe that'll be better for some families. And obviously, one of the big points in our community is this government designation of essential for gun shops and gun ranges and the firearms industry in general. I think that's going to be a positive outcome and help us in our Second Amendment fight for years to come. It's going to show up in court cases and be quoted quite a bit. So what do people think are the positive potential changes that exist? And my hope in sharing this article this morning and through social media is that in the comments, I'm going to see a lot more positivity. I think with more time and more perspective, and with people getting more used to some of these changes, people will start to see the potential positive. I know a lot of individuals are completely rebooting their lives. They're rethinking their professions. They're rethinking the way they work. They're rethinking the way they spend time with their families. And a lot of them are embracing the pause, as it's referred to in this article, as a chance to reboot and get better.
I know individuals who I have been, will go unnamed, suffice to say we know who some of them are, public figures who I've been trying to get to kind of chill out a little bit and spend more time at home, working from home, and being able to take some downtime, who have been forced, through no fault of their own, to find out, hey, you know what, he was right. I actually can do this shit from home because I've had no choice. And I liken it to, people say to me, and I actually know people who've gone to prison, I could never have gone to prison. And the response that you get is, dude, if you go, you have no choice but to deal with it. You realize what you're capable of doing if you have to go through something traumatic like that. And one of the it's not columns, but one of the paragraphs in this, I'm going to read this, caught my eye. What the trauma has shown us, meaning this goofiness we're going through now, cannot be unseen. A carless Los Angeles has clear blue skies, as pollution has simply stopped. In a quiet New York, you can hear the birds chirp in the middle of Madison Avenue. Coyotes being spotted on the Golden Gate Bridge. These are postcard images of what the world might be if we could find a way to have a less deadly daily effect on the planet. Now, I could take issue with that and argue all day long that we are part of the planet, that we enhance the planet and actually make it better. But I understand the gist of this. I won't get into the politics of that. But these are postcard images of what it would be like, and there's truth to that. What's not fit for a postcard are other scenes we've witnessed. A healthcare system that obviously has problems, and I'm quoting now, providing basic protective equipment for its frontline soldiers. Small businesses and very large ones that don't have enough cash to pay their rent, or workers sending over 16 million people to seek unemployment benefits. And look, I can go on that on my own, Rob, without quoting from the article. But individual people who all of a sudden realize, Jesus Christ, I can't write a check for $50 today if I have to. We see too much of that, and I think you're absolutely correct. That is going to force people to change their life, rethink their livelihoods, rethink what they want to do with their life. And guess what? I don't remember the name of the movie, but I believe it was Cher who was playing a part in that movie, and she said to the guy sitting across the table from her, I wish I could remember the movie, but it's kind of irrelevant. She said, just simply, she says, this whole game is easy to figure out. Find out what you love to do and do it. And I think you're going to see a lot of that. I hope we see a lot less of this shit, quite frankly, and more people beginning to spend more time with their families and realizing what's important in their lives, and that might not be working 27 hours a day. Your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And I know that some people will read this article, and particularly in the gun community, and kind of read the liberal in it and see that it's very much from a perspective of someone who would have everybody in electric cars probably if that guy had the choice, sure. Right? I'm not an electric car kind of guy, but the premise, the underlying principles in that article are really important. And I think that's in a time of crisis, right? In a time of challenge. I think that's incredibly important to think about is what are your underlying principles? Because that's a lot of people challenging me and pushing back on me for this call for businesses to reopen, right? Very simple. What's the first step? Very simple. Reach out to the businesses that you know in your community that are closed right now. If you would support them, if you would go do business with them, if you would sit on their patio and have a drink, if you would go into the comic book store and buy a comic book, reach out to them through their social media and let them know that if they defy the non-essential orders and open up, you're going to go there and you're going to support them. And with the risks that comes with the financial or fines or arrest or whatever else could happen as well. Like if you support them, let them know so that they can have the option of reopening with consumer and customer and community support if they so choose to. And people have challenged that. Well, that's inciting risk or raising the likelihood that someone's going to get sick. Rob, how can you do that? That's irresponsible. Ultimately, I choose freedom over safety. That's the bottom line. And if, in our community, in our society, in our culture, overwhelmingly, there's a couple of examples have come to mind since I started saying this, but overwhelmingly, it's the afflicted person or the person with a medical condition that has to adjust their life to the condition, right? The boy in the bubble, right? Like all of society didn't change during the HIV/AIDS explosion, the crisis that we went through in the early 80s. Largely, it was the people who were immunocompromised who changed their behaviors. It wasn't all of society that changed the behavior to accommodate them, before treatments were developed where they could kind of live a mostly normal life, right? So if you think about it, like the thing that always bothers me is like the peanut thing, right? Like apparently there's people who are so weak that they're going to sit in row 27, and if I'm in row 7 opening a bag of peanuts, they're going to die, and I can't eat peanuts on a flight. Like other than that, I can't think of very many examples where it's the non-afflicted person who has to change their behaviors for the other person. So will people who are immunocompromised, people who have asthma, people who are otherwise compromised in their lungs have to adjust and enter into a more risky period as we reopen society?
Yeah,
yes. Is that okay? Yes. Is it fair? Well, it's not fair that you have asthma, right? But it is fair that the business owner gets to open back up. And it is the reality that the person with asthma or with lung disease or whatever else they've got is going to have to make adjustments and worry more. But that's kind of the dice that got rolled, right? That's the hand that got dealt. So we got to move forward with that. And I don't think that the comic book shop should go out of business because people in the community have asthma.
I know exactly what you mean. Let me read a statement here from Mike. Mike Harbison says, I'm one of the small businesses getting hit by this. I have an auto truck shop and a trucking company which hauls construction equipment, and we are grinding to a halt. Mike, I feel you. I spent a lot of time in the transportation industry. Transportation is an essential business. However, if what you are hauling isn't moving, then I know exactly where you're coming from. It will make you feel better here. We're going to come out of this, and this is exactly what we're talking about here. So feel good about that. We will come back. Take advantage of what's available out there, the Paycheck Protection Act and everything else. Do what you need to do. We're pulling for you, brother. If there's anything we can do, you reach out to us. Reach out to me personally, mark@armedamericanradio.org. We'll do whatever we can for you guys. Rob, you were talking on some real – I go back to the statement from Benjamin Franklin many, many moons ago when he said those who would give up, and I'm paraphrasing, a little bit of security or give up their liberties for a sense of security deserve neither. Now, he was not talking about the way we use the phrase today. He was talking about some property and taxing that property. The Penn family who had many, many acres, he was trying to get it to tax it to raise money for the French Indian War. But we use that quote today, and we can do that because it was said, and we can apply it to today. And that's exactly what I think you're getting at is, and I just expand on it just briefly. Freedom is very fragile. And in order to maintain our freedoms, if we give in to everything because it makes us feel good, we're going to lose all of our freedom. So I think Benjamin Franklin today would agree if we use his words in the context that we use them today. Would you agree with that?
I think so. I think that as a lover of freedom, a lover of liberty, as an entrepreneur, and as a politician and an educator, I think that Ben Franklin would agree with the way we use that quote and what it means. I think that there are some overly simplified applications that people have made in the past. I think we are, this is the reason, right? Why now? For years, I've been fighting for gun rights, right? And I don't think a $200 tax stamp is the reason to walk up the Capitol steps with an unregistered SBR and say, go ahead and arrest me and let's test this in court, right? Obviously, I haven't done that. I do think that this overreach, this line has been crossed now. I will go sit, if one of those bars opens up across from the apartment, I will go sit on their patio and order a drink and sit 6 feet, 10 feet away from other people and be civilly disobedient along with them and take whatever risks come with that. Like, this is the line that has me to the point of, it's time to step up, and I think that's important for people to understand, is that this is a different kind of infringement, and it's nefarious, man.
It is, and I'm glad you mentioned it. Let me go to the end of my column on Ammo Land today, because that is exactly what you said. Tyrants hate that we can make our own decisions. We must get back to normal as soon as possible, even if it means violating what I determined to be myself a tyrannical order, which is you can't sit on that restaurant back deck and have a drink. Apparently in Tyrant Land, USA, heading to Home Depot for mulch is now considered civil disobedience. What you just described, a normal activity of going to a restaurant and having a drink, by doing that and defying whoever laid that order down, Rob, is now considered civil disobedience. You risk a ticket. And you say nefarious, we could get a lot more colorful, but you nailed it. You hit it right smack on the head. I'm just going to exclamation point it right there. You want to go ahead and close us out today? Feel free.
I think take a deep breath. Think about what it means, what your fundamental principles are. Like, what's your underlying premise, right? Like, how did we get here? What are we dealing with? And now, how do you apply your base fundamental principles to the situation we're in? Because these are hard times, these are challenging times. And I think it's really important to go back to what do you truly believe in, and how do you apply that? And if what you truly believe in is minimizing risk and doing everything you can to protect the weak, and you're willing to sacrifice and see other people sacrifice for them, then maybe for you, staying at home is the thing to do. If you are unable to get personal protective equipment, if you're unable to get masks or gloves, or you don't have enough hand sanitizer to decontaminate 5 times a day if you go in and out of the house, stay home. But on the other hand, if you value freedom more, if you accept risk, if you're willing to help the weak, but not necessarily, sacrifice communities and businesses for the weaker people in society, but you're willing to put on gloves and put on a mask and put on use hand sanitizer and deliver food to them, go to the comic book shop and bring that person that can't go out because they have really bad asthma the comic books they want, but also support the comic book store, then do that instead. Because it's not somebody it was like accused me of being into eugenics, like, oh, so you just want the weak to die off. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is we can protect people and help people while also opening the businesses back up.
You can't help the person that made that comment. Some people you can't fix, brother, okay? Sometimes you just can't fix stupid. Listen, Aaron Sharp, I'll close it out with this, one of our Facebook viewers, says, my rights stop at the end of your nose. If I'm not picking your pocket or breaking your leg, it's none of your business. And there's a lot of truth to that, and that's a libertarian point of view. And of course, that's a primo libertarian point of view that says, just get out of my face and we're good to rock and roll. Hey, I feel the same way about a homeowners association. I talk a little bit about what they wrote to me in a letter to my neighbors. I guess the homeowners association feels like, well, if these town councils and mayors are getting involved in coronavirus, COVID-19, we have to do the same thing. So you'll enjoy the Ammo Land column. It's a lot of fun. Rob, thanks for being here. Any final thoughts? You want to go ahead and close it out?
That's it, man. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks, Rob, for being here. Appreciate it very much. All right, Facebook viewers, if you want to